Well, we're all here, so we'll get started. So, welcome everybody to another episode of Qumulex Radio. This is a bonus week. We're doing 2 days in a row. Very exciting. And this time we do have my friend and co-pilot, Aaron Newman, has decided to join us. So I don't know if that means you're just not busy today, or I don't know how you determine if
Yeah.
you're coming or not, but he's here. And we have an extra special guest here that I've recently met. I'm very excited about this episode. I want to tell a little story to introduce Bear here. So
Okay.
at ISC West, I recorded, I think, 17 videos and edited and posted the videos during the course of the show, which I enjoyed immensely. And everyone has seen my dad jokes in the wrap up video and my goofing around. But as fun as it was, I've never been so exhausted after a trade show. I mean, and I had a thought of like, there's no one else on earth crazy enough to do what I'm doing right now. And ladies and gentlemen, you now have another. I came across this gentleman here, Bear, who has the Security Today podcast, who did the exact same thing that I was doing. So much respect to you, Bear, and
Well,
really
thank you.
appreciate you coming on. So just to get everybody a bit acquainted, give everybody just a little overview of what you've been doing here with the Security Today podcast.
Yeah, for sure. So, like Josh said, I'm Bear Halverson. I've been in the industry for a little over 11 years, and I started in locksmithing and worked my way into electric access control and video surveillance, and then kind of climbed the ladder through, national service providers to get into an engineering role. So that's kind of like my day to day within the industry. I still get to interact with in the industry. I'm not just out here pumping stuff as just an influencer, if you will, I guess. But yeah, I started the Security Today podcast kind of because I needed it, just as much as I wanted the people who are listening to need it. But I was trying to find the time to reach that 10,000 hours of mastery from Malcolm Gladwell. And so I started it with the hopes that other people would get a chance every single week to kind of tune into the industry and listen in on what they're doing. And it's been growing. I'm doing video podcasts like this now with interviews with people all over, from technician to CEOs and the like. And then I've got a educational arm off of the podcast called Black Picket Fence, where I'm trying to drum up educational courses to help people kind of in the industry progress further, because I think there's a pretty big gap between not just the news and highlights or the information between the C-suite and the technician, but also in the education sphere. So that's
Well,
kind
that's
of
awesome.
the
I
game
didn't know
plan.
about that. So
Yeah.
the black picket fence, are you trying to find like where the education is and like be a central point where they can come and find everything? Or are you actually offering courses, or what are you doing?
Yeah, so I've got it launched at the beginning of this year. So it's got one course out right now called Professional Access Wiring, and it's about a 3-hour course over the access control circuit. And so it's all done through it's called Loom, but it's like, streaming when the guy's in the bottom corner, and I walk through slides and I show how to wire things. There's like 8 downloadable wiring diagrams from major companies like Brevo and PDK and stuff like that. And the idea is that you come out of that course just really having a good understanding around the access control circuit. So exactly we talk relay logic and some troubleshooting in it, troubleshooting with the multimeter, stuff like that. But the idea behind Black Picket Fence is going to be to build that into a little bit of an educational library that you can come to as a security professional. So I'm working on some basics courses right now that are going to be a little more cost effective than the wiring circuit course. And I'm also wanting it to turn into not just physical, but physical, cyber, and I've got a big passion around something called operational security, which is being able to be secure in your online presence, being able to be secure in your family and your central unit and how that's displayed out into the public. So being able to secure yourself in that way as well. So
Whoa,
it's a lot. It's a building empire. It's going to take some time, but I am excited to be tackling at that front.
I love that. I
Yeah,
mean,
very
we
cool.
have Aaron supports a lot of our customers that are maybe new at access control. And so they seem to understand like the interface part of it pretty well, but they're always looking for how do I learn more about the wiring part of it. I mean, there's
Yeah.
way more electronics involved in electronic security when you're dealing with access control versus video, as both of you
Yeah,
know. So that's pretty awesome. We'll have to check that out. And
sure. Yeah. But I do think that like in the industry right now, there's like three main branches between when it comes to education. You kind of have manufacturer education, which they're
mhm,
putting out so that you know how to install their product.
yeah.
You've got organizational like as is or SIA
Mhm,
or PSA that is putting out educational content. And then there's this like kind of lacking what I'm calling uncustomary education. It's like third party. It's from
mhm.
people who have experienced it, and you would usually learn from that person like on the job, but it's being able to kind of curate it and put it in a digestible format that I don't have to be there with you on the site. You can just tune into me, for an hour every night before you Netflix. You know what I'm saying? So
Well, if you
kind
think
of
about it,
that's
I
the
mean,
that's
there's
the goal.
no low voltage wiring college that you can go
Yeah,
to. I mean,
exactly.
there's like
Exactly.
if you're in high school, there's some career center type stuff. If you're in a union environment, there's some trade school level stuff, but like a lot of it is just on the job. Like you have to get somebody to see something in you, and then you got to hope they're teaching you right. I think
Yeah.
everybody kind of teaches that differently.
Yeah.
You've still got the old hands out there that, everything's got a million dolphin connectors on it that
Yeah.
probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Don't get all that in there, just splice it. There's a lot of that out there. So that's pretty great. So I love the fact. Also, I have a feeling you're very expert because to be honest with you, when I was an integrator and first got involved with access control, I didn't have anybody that wanted to cut in door strikes. Man, that was really hard to have anybody that was just really comfortable with or understanding like the code requirements of a door and understanding that you basically own the door once you start touching it and installing locks and readers, it's yours. So you need to make sure that it's up to code. And so we
Yeah.
had, a locksmith that we worked with that was very expert. So that's pretty cool. So that was your way in to the industry, was starting off as a locksmith.
Yeah, it was. I started with your classic locksmith too. I mean, like over 50, bitching about everything, wanting to
Yeah.
retire. You know what I'm saying? Just a shop full of brass and showing me how to, pick safes and, cut in door hardware and replace closers, the whole thing. So
That all
I'm very,
sounds like
very
my
grateful for
Aunt
that. Yeah.
Clara. My Aunt Clara fits all those characteristics.
Yeah,
So do you
that's
think that
cool.
that was an advantage for you then? I would imagine because you really understood the door, you understood code better, I assume, and I assume you were not scared to death to cut in a door strike where there was not already one.
Yeah, not anymore, but definitely in the beginning. Yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking because that
Oh, did
frame's
you have
pretty
a bad
expensive.
experience? Did we have one not go well?
You know what? I haven't. I've definitely had like, maybe a little bit of foobar moments where you kind of gotta, get the Sharpie out on bronze aluminum and like repaint the the thing
Yeah.
because your grinder, took off without you. But no, I haven't had any like major moments. Now, locksmithing in and of itself offers some crazy moments because you're dealing with like clients and residents and it gets weird and those sorts of things. But um no, no bad hardware installs yet. I've put things on backwards before, for sure. I feel like we've all done that. It's like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
This is supposed to go the other way. So, but nothing too crazy there.
I put my shirt on backwards this morning, but thankfully Aaron told me, so we got that. We got it fixed.
You got that fixed. Yeah.
Got it fixed.
Very cool.
So, I mean, what's that like? I mean, we started this back in August, and Aaron and I really had no clue how to run a podcast, and I'm fairly confident we still don't. We seem to be managing, but
You're doing
learning
great. Yeah.
lessons. Thank you. Learning lessons every episode. I mean, what was that experience like? I mean, because I mean, I remember thinking about, I wasn't worried about like how to get guests or what to say or all the things that you might imagine. I was just thinking like, how am I going to record this thing? Like, what is the best way
Mhm.
to do it? And all the mechanics and logistics of that. I mean, what'd you go through getting that started?
Yeah, so I mean the podcast itself started about 3.5 years ago, and then I kind of set it down for like a year and a half because life was busy. So that was probably the hardest thing over the entirety, was becoming anywhere near consistent with it. I've been very privileged to, now be working for an integrator out of Wisconsin called Sprinter Business Solutions, and they have provided me, an hour or two a week to kind of pour into it. And it's only on that like hour that, even at that, I feel more motivated in the evenings, to pour time into it. So that's been a key, is like trying to find that motivation to get it consistent has been difficult, but overall, I knew a little bit about musical, like recording, microphone, like type of equipment,
Hmm.
just from growing up with a little bit of a background, a little bit of music background. And so I kind of took that, but it's been difficult on my end from the outward appearance of the podcast. So like everything from the website to email gathering to building that course, to finding tools that'll allow me to schedule content, because a lot of the content I do now, I schedule. I don't do it like that day.
Right.
It's just been the uphill battle of that. I mean, essentially, and you guys know this, but it's like another job. It's like trying to also be a chef on the side. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like you have to learn all the things to do and make it worth it. So that has been pretty difficult, but the nice thing is we got Google, and so you can kind of
Yeah.
find reviews and search things that you need, and that's been beneficial.
So you mentioned before, like initially when you started out, most of your content was audio. It was an audio podcast, and I think
Right.
you mentioned like you were making long trips. You had a lot of commuting at one point, and you were wishing that you could listen to Aaron's nodding because he remembers this conversation we had was very similar. I mean, you were looking for content. You're like, hey, I could listen to cybersecurity stuff, IT stuff, all this other stuff. It wasn't really a lot of content where you could kind of listen and learn and be engaged with the industry on your drive back, right? So like you kind of
Yeah.
started off audio, went to video. I mean,
Yeah.
what's been the hardest part of that transition, going from just straight audio to adding video to it?
The video learning curve of editing video. So I use Riverside.fm, and then I, download that after I record it, and I throw it into Adobe Premiere. And I kind of
Hmm.
edit it, and I put intros on it and balance volumes and all of that. So I put a little bit of more time into that side now than I did when I first started just recording videos. But it's been a little bit of a learning curve of like Google searching, in Premiere, how do I take off the reverb, from one
Right.
customer, this or that or the other. So that's been a little bit of a learning curve, but I think that, once you get the audio down, I don't know. I don't think the video hasn't been super difficult. But like you were saying, I was not finding content in the physical security space. And that drive for the importance of having some type of content out there for our industry is, I think, what maybe drives you guys on this podcast. It's
Hmm.
definitely what drives me. That physical security space, it was kind of null and void. And when I was spending so much time in the field, and I'm like, hey, I want to get better at this. And I've always been a little bit on the, philosophical side of life. I'm like, what can I gain, and how can I grow my interest in this? Not just learning like, oh, here's a technical manual for this relay board or a technical manual for this
Right.
BMS. Like, I didn't really care as much about that stuff, because you go from integrator to integrator, or you go from company to company, and you'll change that over your career. Like you'll know more now about Qumulex than you did back in the day about some other, video management software. And so I wasn't looking to pour my time into that, but I wanted some sort of content that was bringing me people within the industry that were saying, here's how to be a good leader in this specific space, or here's how to sharpen your theory when you're installing or designing a security system, or if you're running your own security business, here's somebody's take on how they work through going through an entire project, and what can you reap from that, and puzzle
Yeah.
piece into your own career. So that drive has kind of caused not very much difficulty on the tech side of getting the podcast up or putting it out, because we live in a technological world. That's been an interest of, technology's been a hobby of mine prior to the podcast. So that hasn't been super difficult, but it is that drive that keeps me wanting to learn more to make this thing as polished as possible. Because I want the next guy who's having to drive from Kansas City to Omaha every week for 3 hours, not just blowing it on music and some talk radio about something that he's not actually putting his life into.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a super fair point because, there is, I feel like, a tremendous amount of product training because all the manufacturers, us included, I mean, we try to put all those details out there so you understand how to install it, but that's not telling you the business. That's not telling you.
Yeah.
It's like you can go to college, you can go to university, and you can get all kinds of generic type of training. But I feel like other industries seem to have a lot of that type of education that is focused, like if you're in finance or marketing or different things like that. But if you just want to know how to run a trade business, I mean, again, it just feels like it's just kind of bump your nose and figure it out as you go. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of that kind of information around there. And it's kind of leads into my next question. I mean, like you were saying the other day when we were talking, if you were into cybersecurity or a million other things, there's just a ton of content out there, from technical to business to how to advance your career to all manner of things. And then in our industry, we don't really have a lot of that right now. So here's a couple of us trying to address that. But why do you think that we're a little different that way? And do you think it's just us? Do you think it's kind of all the low voltage? I mean, I remember like there's a low voltage nation. Is that Blake
Mhm.
Ermos? I
Mhm.
I remember seeing him a few years back and being like amazed, like, oh wow, somebody's talking about structured cabling, which I used to be very involved with. I'm like, that blew my mind. I'm like, this is great. So maybe it's not just security, maybe it's all this low voltage stuff. But back to my question, I mean, do you have a reason you think that we're different that way where we don't have much?
I think if you stack us up against other industries that deal maybe in like OT, like operational technology, like that, there's probably not a lot of content in those either. Like, I don't know if you get into HVAC, or now I will tell you, I started a lot of my content on Instagram, and there are bubbles. There's like
Mhm.
several plumbers I follow that put out really good content, that are either short reels, or they're like reviewing a specific product that's very specific to a type of plumbing that they're doing. And so I think that the trades overall were just a little slow to maybe the content machine, because over time the content machine kind of started from the general public who wants to see pictures of your meal or pictures of your dog and this and that and the other. But they they then, it's kind of just began to, it's grown and it's leached itself into other industries and stuff like that. But now in the low voltage specifically, I think low voltage is growing to a point where you are really starting to get these grooves or avenues, where you will see low voltage as just now the security industry, maybe the structured cabling industry or datacom or telecom. And then you've got AV on the side of that. And then you have, kind of like IoT smart devices, like that's kind of
Mhm.
being its own lane now. And so they all do things a little bit different. I know that cybersecurity, those guys are in front of a computer anyway. And I'm going to say that the average amount of them are they're probably pretty interested in like video games or streaming anyway. So that came like really natural, from
Yeah, that makes
cybersecurity.
sense.
And
Mhm.
out of that, they've just pumped massive amounts of content. You can find whatever you want in YouTube or on podcasts or anything like that. But when it comes to structured cabling, for instance, I know that like Let's Talk Cabling with Chuck, that he's an
Oh yeah.
RCDD.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really leading the way in that
Yeah.
datacom area. And so I hope that I can just do that in the security side. And I think it's picking up. And the nice thing is, like you said, there isn't a ton of content, or there's not a ton out there right now doing it for the security industry. There's a lot of manufacturers who kind of jumped on the train, and manufacturers are like putting out manufacturer specific podcasts. But
Right.
and I know that you guys have Qumulex, but I've listened to your content and it's like it's much more general. It's looking to
Yeah.
touch the industry and make it more healthy in the broadness of it. And I think that's growing. I do, you know. I know that like I'm just doing like ninja plugs left and right, but like
Do it.
the security guys podcast with Roger Kimmick and Everett Gray, I know that they're a phone specific, but they've also been talking a lot about just like general topics in security. And I think it's that stuff that will take the everybody from the C-suite to the technician who have a couple of hours a day or who have even half an hour a day to take in some content, they'll be able to like start mulling their mind around it and kind of getting those gears spinning. And the more vibrations that we all get spinning in this industry, the healthier it's going to be because everybody's going to be kind of part of the conversation.
No, I would agree with that. And I know Aaron and I are always wondering how we can encourage others maybe to do what we're doing. I think
Yeah.
we're kind of lucky working for a manufacturer, of course, because we do make a lot of videos and do other things that are probably more marketing or product focused. So
Hmm.
I feel like we have a lot of the tools already and certainly the time that we can do something like this. But I feel like there's probably a lot of people out there maybe that want to contribute. Maybe they don't have that stuff natively. So I mean, what would you recommend? I mean, if somebody was wanting to try and contribute and throw some of this knowledge into the ether, I mean, what advice would you have for them to get started?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. First of all, I would only be encouraging that people would be adding to the conversation from their perspective or from what they're doing. The thing about our industry is that content wise, like it might not be like podcasts and conversations like this, but I do feel like, gosh, there is a ton of content. Like you can scroll LinkedIn, and sometimes I scroll it and just like I think in my head, I'm like, why am I really here? Because this is look at all of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, do I need
Yeah.
to be adding to this? But then I'm like, well, okay, I try to have a goal or a mission that if you're gonna come to the Security Today podcast, you're going to walk away no matter what the episode is with at least something, you know, at least something that helps and benefits what you're doing. But I think that that would be probably my first encouragement is just make sure that when you're contributing to the industry, that you're bringing a very genuine and honest experience from where you're at and bring it with the notion and the open heart that you know very little compared to the rest of the industry because that's true for every single person. Even for the people who you count as respectful and like they're giants and they know everything in and out, they still come to the entirety of the industry and know very little. So like if you can keep that posture but come with the idea that I want to give what I've learned and what I know, uh I think that would only be uh, something that produces health within the industry. And
Yeah.
it's not hard. Like the barrier to entry is a lot lower now. I feel like you all you have to do is get like a, you know, $100 Yeti microphone or less than that, and then plug it into a 12.99 subscription on Riverside FM, and now you can contribute. Or you just have to write something and post it on LinkedIn, and now you're contributing. So the barrier to entry is low. Don't let that be
Yeah.
a stopping point, you know?
I like what you're saying there too, because I think what I'm hearing is, try to be humble. I mean, there may be other
Yeah,
perspectives out there that are different than yours because it's a different region or different challenges. Nobody knows everything.
right.
So if you
100%.
come in hot like that, I mean, you're going to turn into one of those Instagram influencer types that, people don't want to hear the message.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm sorry, Aaron, you're out now. I think I've realized something. We just can't have your behavior.
Yeah.
No, I
Speaking
agree.
of
Like,
Aaron, what do you got going on, man? Because I always talk the whole time.
no,
I
no,
never
no, you're
let Aaron
good.
jump in.
He
Jump
has a
in,
good
Aaron.
flow. I can't interrupt his flow, it keeps things going. But anyway, no, I agree with your last point there. Like, how many times have I watched a video and I'm like, this is just fluff. This has
Yeah.
no like real content to it, and
Right.
it makes me frustrated, and really, it's like a lot of these videos, they're meant to have like, kind of snappy thumbnails and captivate you for that first 20 seconds of your, subscription to watching their video. Um, but then after that, it just kind of like falls flat. But I agree with you, man. I think, the perspective of, industry leaders, kind of sharing more knowledge, even from the low end technician who's, out here doing installations. What are things that make his life easier, and what could, he be sharing with other technicians that, you're just simply not gonna maybe necessarily catch on your own. Yeah, I wish, I had some of that back in the day. That would be amazing. I mean, shoot, half the time, I think back, all we really had, I talk like I was in the 80s or something. This was called like early 2000s. We just had manuals. We didn't even really have internet on our phones yet. And just trying to navigate the waters of new technology or new products, because how common is this story that you're just handed a box of parts and you're expected to go out and install something, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, for the first time, and you're like, oh shoot, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I remember one instance where it's like I had no idea what the difference between a masonry bit and like a metal or a wood bit was at that moment. And the senior tech walks around the corner and I'm in this block wall with my metal bit and I'm just jamming that drill as hard as I can into that block. And he's like, what are you doing, dude? So it's just like little things. Like you can't assume everybody knows everything, like you said. Everybody starts somewhere. We're not born out of the womb with this knowledge. um,
Right.
but yeah, no, I 100% agree with that.
I don't want to say
No,
I remember burning up a drill motor trying to use a standard bit in masonry, but Pepperidge Farms remembers for sure. I mean, it is 100% happened.
yeah. No, I think you bring up a good point though, that like if there is some value to that, because I kind of feel like where we're at with technicians these days is the technician role is kind of it's in a difficult spot. It's like kind of hard to fill right now. There's a lot of information that you have to have as a technician today that maybe you didn't have to have back then. Like, you may need to know what a masonry bit is, and you may also need to know how to ping an IP address to be a technician in the
Right.
same role within a company that you're working with. And so because of that, I do feel like in the past though, it was valuable to kind of be handed a box of parts and be like, go put this in, because you had to go through the grit of being like, okay, I'm gonna problem solve, I'm gonna troubleshoot,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna plan, I'm gonna, project this thing into this piece of hardware into its role within this environment. That the entirety of that caused maybe an outlook on life that I feel like some of the technicians today are missing. They're waiting for their boss or the lead tech to tell them what to do, and then they check the box that they completed that task. But there's no continued thought into how this can be installed, or how the entirety of the task can be or job can be completed. And so I feel like that's one thing that you know you had to earn, because
Mm-hmm.
there was no internet. You couldn't flip open your flip phone and Google anything. But at the same time, it's like, are we continuing to project that down into our technicians as an industry, or is the industry just kind of taking off? And now when people come into our industry as a technician, they're having like this huge hill to climb, that if they don't have the will or the determination, which outside cultural factors are diminishing as well, then we kind of end this road of like, I can't find a good tech, or I get a tech and they only
Yeah.
last a little bit of time, or this or that or the other. So there is some benefit to that. It's just, how do we, in this day and age, you know shape it and make it malleable so that we can fit it into the technicians that we're needing in the security industry.
Has that still been an issue? I mean, I feel like you could have been anything 5 years ago or 4 years ago. I feel like every business, every company was just saying we can't find enough humans. And now when I, read Apple News in the morning, because it's my best collection of all the different publications for one low price, not to make a plug, but new thing I'm impressed with. Uh, but it seems like now you're just seeing like everybody's laying off 10, 12,000 people. and it's like a tough job market in a lot of industries. Where are we at right now, like with your company? Like when you post a position or you need somebody, is it getting easier to find somebody, or is it just as hard as it's ever been?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so you're right. I work for an integrator right now. We have about 20 technicians, and there's like over half of them are pretty stationary for more than, we've had them more than a year. And then that under half is like a little bit of a revolving door. But
Right.
and I'm a part of Technology Worldwide, which is a nonprofit organization that's got a Slack channel full of like 300 or 400 like techs or integrators in kind of all of low voltage. And so hearing their stories and then kind of matching it up against what I'm seeing also, I actually think that from the business side of things, we need more. And that might be even from the trades side of things. And we were talking about this just the other day when we kind of got our Connect call on, but the trades are like the trades are suffering, and that we need people to come into the trades to see value in them. And I think that right now there's a couple of people who are doing an excellent job. Like, I can't remember his last name, but it's Andrew something. I just reposted something on LinkedIn yesterday from him, but he is all about getting people into the trades because of the gap that we're seeing as boomers exit the trades.
Yeah.
And he took a group of students to the Phillies baseball stadium, and he walked them around with contractors, and they showed just how much trade and work went into it, from the HVAC to the electrical to the plumbing. And it was these 80 students, that kind of got to see it firsthand, and that will inspire the the younger generation to be like, oh my gosh, this is a viable option. You mean I don't have to like fall into debt into college and
Right.
with not even knowing what I want to do with my life? I can do this for 3 years and then choose what I want to do with my life, or do this for the rest of my life. And so it I think that our industry needs technicians. Now, the problem is that those layoffs, I think that's on like the softer side or the software
Hmm.
side. The people who are inputting, people who are spending a lot of time at computers and this
Hmm.
and that and the other. And some of those people coming out of that, if they're listening to this, then I would encourage to look into trade, because
Yeah.
you can genuinely make more money doing a trade and be happier. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but when when I was in the field locksmithing, like, now I've got a lot of experience, and so I am happy. I am motivated to kind of build something for the industry. But when I was in that lock van running and I was just a young gun, like changing keys, like, this is some of the better days of my career's life. It was like you were moving, you were kinetic, you were solving problems. And so like all of that can really build in someone's heart to be like, oh, this is a good thing. I'm doing something to contribute to the community or to the world. And so, sorry, I kind of ranted there for a second, but back to your question,
No, I love
we
what
need
you're
we
saying there.
need technicians. Yeah, yeah, we need technicians, but I feel like a lot of the people who come in um that are young to the industry, maybe they just haven't been handed anywhere else in life the grit that would cause them to continue to learn and grow within this role. So a lot of times they come in and, I don't know. I've got like outside beliefs of our culture and our
Hmm.
society and how we're fueling some of the psychology that people are, or philosophy that people are working within. But it feels like when you come into the trade and you're new to it, there's not a lot in life outside of trades right now that are teaching the young people to get curious, to continue to grow, to see it beneficial to learn a bunch of little things instead of like one central thing, and also to go learn it by yourself and not be told to learn
Right.
it. And so it seems like sometimes when we get technicians in, they need to be told, like, do this, do that. Okay, I did this and I did that. Okay, now do this and do that. And there's not a lot of gumption to be like, hey, I did this and that. And I also did this because I felt like maybe that mattered. And it's like, yeah, totally. Or maybe it didn't. And some of the old heads are like, well, you idiot, you shouldn't have done that. You wasted time. but that's not a waste of time. That's showing the initiative that they want to grow.
Yeah.
And then you as the superior just need to like guide that, you know, and push them in the right direction. That was a lot to that question, but
That was pretty great, actually. And two things I would say there. One is, I would sum up a lot of what you're saying there as I don't think people understand how good they're going to feel when they've actually built something tangible. I think writing, like we work for essentially a software company, and I know it's super, they feel super good when they've built something and it works great. They've solved a problem. And I don't mean to take away from that, but when you use tools and actually make something, something as simple as, I'm running conduit because I have a camera that is through an open concrete block area and I need to mount that camera. And, when you take the proper amount of time, it's nice and level, it's nice and clean, it looks good. Maybe the average person wouldn't appreciate it, but you have that moment of standing back, looking at that and like, hell yeah, I just did that. Like that looks good. And that's a nice feeling. And I think kind of the human spirit, it revolves around building things. I mean, you go back thousands of years ago. Yeah, man, that's my hut. I built it and it just had a rainstorm and my family is fine and yours isn't. You need to build yours better. I mean, there's something that feels good, even if you're into cars and you do your own resto mod. It takes you 15 years to do it and enough money that you went through 2 wives. They both left you. They can't handle this anymore. This is not a true story for me, but I've definitely read about it. But you get that done and you stand back and it's like, you didn't just have to go buy that, you did it. And I think that's something that's very healthy for the human spirit. So I do get what you're saying there.
Yeah, no, don't act like you don't drive by the cameras that you installed and point them out to your family.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I remember those days. Hey, I ran the fiber under that building and oh, there's that splice case. I was up in a boom splicing that,
Absolutely.
but I've been out of the field so long now. It's just, I quoted that building. It's just, it doesn't have the same feel. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey man, I know we probably went a little over the time that you budgeted, but I just want to say I was very excited. I saw you talking to Benji, the door dork from Awesome Odd Boy.
Great guy.
And
great guy.
Caused me to kind of hone in and look at what you're doing. Like I said, I had a moment of there was someone else crazy enough to be out recording and doing everything I was at ISC West. So I had immediate respect for what you're doing. I have a whole lot more now, the more that I've talked to you. I really love what you're doing and hope that you keep doing it and hope that we could have some regular interaction, man. I hope we can have you on again sometime and help you try to support the industry however we can. And so I will put your information. So for anybody that's listening or watching, we'll put all the information here. I have to add one. I didn't know about the black picket fence. We'll get that on there too, but we'll put all that in the description of the video. Do you want to give anybody just a quick shout out about how they can find you and follow you?
Yeah, definitely. First, hey, I appreciate it too. And the more I talk to you guys, I think that we align in what we want to give the industry. And so I felt that that's one thing that I feel everybody that I've ran into and like been offered to work with, like if it's Benji on the podcast or if it's you guys talking to you, it's like everybody I've talked to wants goodness. We want things to thrive. And so that's been really cool. So thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. And yeah, you can find me. I pretty much play on Instagram and LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn at Bear Halverson, PSP. And then I'm also on Instagram at Uncle Bear, BAER _. And then at the Security Today podcast and yeah, blackpicketfenceonline.com. So yeah, I'm kind of all over. If you find me somewhere, you'll find all the other stuff because I pretty much just recycle everything that I do everywhere. So
I've been accused of that as well. So again, we'll put all the information here for the podcast and how to get a hold of Bear in our description. Bear, you were awesome. Love what you're doing, man. Keep it going. We'll try to hold the line on our end too. Although Aaron is growing frustrated with me and all of my talking and my nonsense and my dad stories, but we'll work through that. We'll work through that.
We'll get over that hill. Yeah.
Man, really
Sure
appreciate
thing.
you taking time to come on. Hope to talk to you a lot more in the future. And for everybody else, thanks so much for joining. And I will have to give our company just a little plug here. If you are interested in cloud video or access control, check out Qumulex.com or check us out on YouTube and all the social channels. Plug over. Bear, good to see you, man. Thanks so much. Everybody else, we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.